The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place with my partner, Ian Parker. I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
All right, the UFC is not known for taking a whole lot of breaks, so we're not taking a break either. Hello, everybody. I am Brett Okamoto alongside my partner in crime, as always, Ian Parker, who gives us all the bets, all of the picks, all of the leads, a little bit of everything here on this gambling show. And we got a great UFC Fight Night main event to talk about. A UFC Fight Night main card, honestly. A 6-fight main card going down this weekend in Austin, Texas. It is headlined, of course, by a featherweight matchup between Calvin Kattar and Josh Emmett. And Ian, I got to say, man, both of these guys saying this week in Austin that there is no chance that this fight is not a banger, and I completely agree. I don't think they're lying to us. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of takedowns here. I think that these are just two vicious, well-trained featherweights, and we are in for a solid main event, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I would agree. This is going to be an absolute firefight over probably the course of 5 rounds. You got the volume and durability of Kattar, and you got a guy in Josh Emmett who hits like a truck. I'm excited. A banger it shall be.
Yes, well, we like bangers here on this show, but we like money more. So I'm interested in getting your pick on that main event. But before we do, let's take a look back at UFC 275. It was in Singapore. It was a crazy night in the UFC. Why don't you round up your picks? Tell us how we did.
Yeah, we missed out on the parlay. That one kind of stung. I was hoping to keep the streak going. We hit on Allen and Malkoun over 1.5. Garcia went the complete opposite way of what I thought it was going to go. Zhang Wei Li, probably the safest bet of the whole night. And that main event, honestly, I don't think anyone would have thought it was going 5 rounds. It was so many opportunities to finish. But 2-2, we got to do better, and we will do better this week.
Oh, I have no doubt about it. And I agree with you, man. I think anybody watching that main event was thought that fight was over about 1 billion different times. Hey, how about this? Israel Adesanya, the middleweight champion, picking up, what is this here? What do we got here? Total stake, $2,000 to win $7,500. He did it on his teammate, Della Maddalena, a guy that, we were very, very high on coming out of Australia. He gets the job done with his second KO in the UFC. So, hey, congratulations to the champ. Hey, the rich get richer at UFC 275. So let's go ahead and get into this UFC Fight Night, man. Calvin Kattar versus Josh Emmett. I'm super curious to get your thoughts on this because I feel like the market overcorrected itself with Calvin Kattar, right? And you see that in the main event. He's minus 230 in this matchup against Josh Emmett. That is, of course, headlining this 6-fight main card. Like I said, I'm looking forward to talking to every fight on this main card. I think it's low-key one of the better Fight Night lineups of the entire year. But getting back to that main event, Calvin Kattar versus Josh Emmett. I think that the market sort of overcorrected itself when he was a plus 200 dog against Giga Chikadze. Of course, that did not work out too well for the favorite Chikadze. Now I'm wondering if it's overcorrecting itself again, too far the other way. I mean, Calvin Kattar probably shouldn't have been a plus 200 dog against Giga Chikadze. He proved that in that 5-round fight. But now minus 240 against a guy in Josh Emmett who has ways to finish the fights. I believe that Kattar should be the favorite, but I was a little surprised to see him as this big of a favorite. Did you share that, or did you think that we're actually getting some value here on Calvin Kattar?
You know what? I'm kind of in between because I actually understood why he was such an underdog to Giga Chikadze. Coming off that, listen, let's call it what it was. It was a massive beating over 5 rounds by Max Holloway. He absorbed probably the most significant strikes in the history of the sport. Who would have thought he'd come back after a year and be able to do what he did against someone who everyone thought was the next big thing in the weight class? But what we saw was Calvin Kattar healed up, rested. He fought smart. He used his wrestling, which then allowed his boxing to shine through. The elbows were there. This was the Calvin Kattar that we've been waiting for a very long time. The one that maybe we thought was going to give Holloway some trouble. This is a real interesting matchup. Brett, I don't disagree with you. I'm surprised he's minus 230, minus 240. I would have put him at a minus 185. So it's not that far off and far enough that I cannot take him straight. That's because of what Josh Emmett does possess. Good wrestling takedown defense, so I don't think Kattar will be able to put him on his back. He also has probably one of the nastiest overhand rights and left hooks, power-wise, in the division that we've seen in a very long time. And he does really well against guys who have the reach that are lengthy. We saw it against Shane Burgos. He was able to counter that. But we've also seen the Achilles heel of Josh Emmett where he is a little too patient. He takes his time, and sometimes he has to fight from behind. a la the fight against Michael Johnson, where he was losing up until he landed. I really think it was like the first punch of the whole fight for him, and that was in the third round. So against a guy like Calvin Kattar, he's got to get started early. He's got to work the calf kick so he can slow down Kattar, because I think the pace, the cardio, the 5-round main events favor Kattar. So I will lean Calvin Kattar in this fight. I believe it goes to a decision. I also like over 4.5 rounds. I don't see either one of these guys getting finished. Both guys extremely durable. We've seen them take shots. We've seen them deliver. This is going to be a real exciting fight. For me, it just depends if Kattar can stay away from the power of Emmett. If he can, I think he's the better boxer. I think his angles, the cardio, the output is what gets it done for him. And again, Calvin Kattar, I think, will win this one by decision.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious about your over 4.5, because I don't disagree. Both of these guys have shown a great deal of durability during their careers. I thought it was interesting. The biggest difference I saw in Calvin Kattar when he came back and fought Giga Chikadze as opposed to when he fought Max Holloway, I think he took a page out of Max Holloway's book. He was very, very active in that fight. I think that, his team, Tyson Chartier, the New England cartel, they looked at that fight, they dissected it, and they said, we got to get busier. We want to start to install the pace. And you saw that Calvin Kattar was able to do that against a very talented striker in Giga Chikadze. What has given you the confidence here that he cannot put this fight away? And like you said, maybe Josh Emmett, looking at this, like he needs to get going early in this fight as well and not hang back as he's known to do, and get them bank some rounds early in this fight. How confident are you in that over 4.5?
I'm pretty confident here. Kattar has gone to decision a bunch of times. So is Josh Emmett. It's durability. It's also ways to kind of neutralize someone else's volume. Emmett does have the ability to clinch against the cage. He's physically very strong for this weight class. And both these guys with this wrestling, there could be a lot of jockeying for a position in the clinch. If I'm Emmett, I want to close the distance. I want him to put Kattar on his back, steal rounds, because he's just not a volume guy. He sits back. He relies on his power. He doesn't come forward enough. So if he doesn't get started early, then I would say look for Calvin Kattar to use that jab. And for Emmett, I think he used the wrestling, and I think he uses the clinch to kind of hold him off. And that's why I think it's going to go far.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you got two very, very durable guys, especially Calvin Kattar. I mean, anybody who saw that Max Holloway fight, you're never going to question the heart of Calvin Kattar ever for the rest of his entire career. Let's move to that co-main event. It takes place in the lightweight division. It was a fight we were supposed to see in Arizona last month. Cowboy Cerrone, he made weight for that fight on that pay-per-view, and then with food poisoning, cancels the fight the day of. They rebook it with Joe Lozon here. It's Lozon's first fight since 2019. Cerrone at -170. Ian, do you know, where was Cowboy Cerrone if this fight had happened in Phoenix? Have we seen any kind of line movement here?
You know what? I'm surprised, actually, because I really thought he was going to come down as a lesser favorite due to that. When we were hearing the interviews, when we were hearing him speak all week, and you can attest to this, we were hearing a lot about the mental health side of things. We're hearing about a lot of, sometimes you get the Cowboy in there and sometimes you get Donald in there, and he doesn't know until he steps foot in that cage. And this is a weird fight for him, in my opinion. Stylistically, I don't love it for him, because you got a guy, in Joe Lozon, who's going to come forward, who gets off to a fast start. And Cowboy Cerrone just doesn't anymore. And we haven't seen that same hunger, that same fire out of him, and he's been doing this for a really long time. So I know he got sick that day, but the fact that he didn't fight that day gives him more time to think about things. And to me, I think it's actually worse for him. I think it would have been better off if he was able to fight. You look back at some of these fights that he lost. Anthony Pettis was not a good loss. And you go Price, very tough fight, a lot of damage there. And the biggest surprise, the Alex Morono fight. That was supposed to be a win for him to look really good and go off into the sunset. And Morono just did the right thing, the blueprint. Come forward, be aggressive, get right in his face. And when that happens, we've seen Cowboy Cerrone go down. And Joe Lozon brings that same intensity in the first round, as we saw in his last win against Jonathan Pierce. Yeah.
I got to say, it's hard to kind of piece together if this is going to be a good thing or a bad thing for Cowboy mentally, because who knows, man? I mean, this guy, and he's admitted this, so I'm not, saying anything that he wouldn't himself agree with. He's been inconsistent from the mental standpoint. So I don't really know. I can't say with a degree of certainty whether it was a good thing for him, or maybe he got through that week and he was kind of thinking about retirement, and now it's almost like he's lived it. So now it's easier the second time around. I could see a case for that. I will tell you what concerns me about this one, though, Ian. It is that he is making weight again. This is twice now that he's going to cut weight, make that 155-pound weight limit. I think Lozon is smaller, doesn't have as bad of a cut. Does that concern you at all? Do you think that that's a factor at all? The Cowboy is making that weight cut twice in essentially 30 days.
I think every factor that doesn't help Cowboy Cerrone right now. Like you said, the mental aspect of it, and also the mental aspect of having to cut weight twice. You know, he's not a small guy for this weight class. And he even said, as you get older, cutting weight is harder. For Joe Lozon, I think this is a fantastic matchup for him to possibly get his second win in a row in 2 years. You know, Cerrone's just not that aggressor anymore. He's just not there. And for Joe Lozon, if this fight hits the ground, he is an excellent grappler, great jiu-jitsu, and on the feet, the guy can strike. So unless Cowboy goes back to the kicking game and he's able to really strike from a distance, I like Joe Lozon here. I don't think this fight goes 3 rounds either side, but if you want an underdog to play on this card, I believe it's Joe Lozon.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think for me, it's one of those cases where if you liked Joe Lozon when they were supposed to fight a month ago, then you have to really like him here, just because I do think that the weight cut twice in 30 days or whatever it is, 35, 36 days will impact Cerrone more than it will impact Joe Lozon. Okay, let's go to the welterweight division. You got Tim Means taking on Kevin Holland, who has been obviously already a fun addition to this 170-pound weight class. He looked good in a finish over Cowboy Oliveira in March. Tim Means, quietly, man, this guy's won 3 in a row, and his last loss was to Daniel Rodriguez, who I think both of us are pretty high on. We like Daniel Rodriguez, so that's a quality loss if you could count at that. Means is the sizable underdog here, plus 230. What do you think of this line?
We are high on D-Rock, and I look forward to seeing him back in the cage. Look, Tim Means, 38 years old. He's been around for a while, and he is riding a 3-fight win streak. However, we know where Kevin Holland's weakness is. It's the wrestling. Oliveira was able to get him down in that first round. We saw Kevin be able to survive it, give the thumbs up, one choke. You and I were there. We said, all right, here comes Kevin Holland in the second round. This is where he's probably going to get it done. And I see it kind of going similar here. If Means cannot get this fight to the floor, I think Kevin Holland will end this fight before the third round ends. He's got the better striking here. He can take Tim Means down if he wants, but I don't think it's necessary. Means is not a bad ground guy. He's kind of good everywhere. He's not great anywhere, but he's extremely hittable. He keeps his hands low. He gets a little reckless in the striking. And that's where I think Holland's counter-striking will be a huge asset. And I think Kevin Holland gets this done inside the distance.
Yep, and you got to like Kevin's finishing ability here because, like you said, Tim does get hit occasionally in his fights. That's why a lot of us love to watch this guy fight. It's action-packed, but you don't necessarily want to be in a huge action-packed fight with Kevin Holland because he does have finishing power. We know that. Let's go to the 185-pound division. Joaquin Buckley, man, 28-year-old Joaquin Buckley. He's 4-2 now in the UFC, taking on Albert Duraev. These two are former training partners. Duraev actually saying this week that he can't believe that Buckley took this fight because we both know how it's going to go, and it's not going to go well for him. What do you think of that that talk between these two who have a familiarity with one another? And can you get some value on plus 190 with Buckley, a big knockout guy, as we all know?
You know what? It's tough for me because I do think Buckley is a good talent. I think he's got solid striking. You know, we've seen in his past few fights that he can weather the storm. He can come back, and he takes good angles. He's got good kicks. His striking is a little, I don't want to say it's unpredictable, but it is creative. Of course, that kick over Impa was exciting. But this is a guy that I feel is going to be really tested here. Now, we saw cardio in his last fight, but not against someone who thrives on cardio either. I think Duraev is a really bad matchup for him. I do think he's going to push the pace on Buckley. The wrestling's going to come into play. I don't think Buckley gets submitted here. I think he's able to make it to 3 rounds. I just think that matchup styles make fights. I think Duraev's striking is more than good enough to keep it on the feet if he needs to, and he's going to have that threat of the wrestling and grappling, and I think it's going to be too much for Buckley. So give me Duraev by decision.
All right, taking Duraev in a fight between two former training partners. Let's go back to the 155-pound division. Damir Ismagulov taking on Goran Kutateladze, who is fighting out of Sweden. Haven't seen him for a little bit. He missed all of 2021 with some injuries, but I know that there's some excitement around Goran. There's some excitement about Damir as well. Two guys who maybe kind of fly under the radar a little bit right now, but two guys who I think a lot of us think could put together a winning streak at 155 pounds. Which one of them do you like better here?
I like Damir here actually a lot. I think the odds should be a little bit higher. And the reason why I say that, he's been more active. He's undefeated in the UFC. Gurm's only fought once. He's been out for a year and a half. It'll actually be closer to 2 years by the time the fight comes on Saturday. And I think Gurm is just a little too one-dimensional here. You know what he's going to try to do? He's going to try to wrestle. Although he's got a bunch of knockouts, he's a great finisher. They're more of power, almost like a Josh Emmett. Doesn't throw a ton of volume, a lot of overhands, a lot of wild hooks. And I just think Damir is a smarter fighter, is a higher quality boxer, good fight IQ, could stay away from that power. I really like Damir in this fight. I think the activity is going to help him here.
All right, confident pick on Ismagulov at -170. Let's close out this main card, man, at 185 pounds. Julian Marquez, who went through that long 3-year injury layoff. He's 2-0 since coming back from that. And Gregory Rodriguez, man. I mean, you were talking about activity for Damir. How about activity for this guy, man? He fought 4 times in 2021, and this is his second fight in 2022. He is coming in as the favorite, -190. Marquez, who I want to say has cashed in some of these dog positions before, is +160. What do you think of this fight at 185 pounds?
You know, I'm actually surprised Rodriguez is this high of a favorite off his last fight. Granted, it was a split decision loss, pretty controversial there. Marquez is a very dangerous fighter. We know he can take shots. We know he can grapple. We know he is able to keep up with a good pace, and he is strong. This is going to be a really exciting fight. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this may be a candidate for fight of the night. Do not blink. I'm going over 1.5 rounds here. Granted, both guys are finishers. You know, Marquez, whenever he's gotten his finishes, have been towards the end of the second, early third. I think he'll be able to take what Rodriguez throws, and I think the same for Rodriguez. So I think we're going to get a really exciting 3-round striking battle, maybe some clinch work to kind of stall a little bit. You know, but if, again, I don't mind if someone takes a flyer on Julian Marquez here. I think he's a very talented guy. You know, he's been put in some bad positions. He's fought out of it. You saw against Max Patolo on the highlight. He was about to get choked out, and somehow he ends up choking him out in one of the more fun fights of the year then. So, for me, over 1.5 rounds. I think both guys are going to be able to hold off, but it's going to be an exciting one.
Okay, you got to pay a little bit on that -190, but over 1.5 rounds, I would agree that I do see that fight going a little longer as well. Okay, so that wraps up our 6-fight main card, man. And again, I love this main card. I think there's a lot of different interesting fights, compelling, entertaining fights. So love adding your insight and your betting picks to the main card. Let's take a look at the prelims. Ian, we love to rapid fire through some of these prelims, so the floor is yours. Tell us who you're leaning towards on all these prelim fights.
All right, Adrian Yanez, Tony Kelley. I'm going Yanez at that number. We're going to throw him that parlay later on. Silva versus Jasmine. Fights going the distance there. Court McGee and Jeremiah Wells. Give me the veteran Court McGee. I think he closes the distance and slows this fight down to make it a wrestling match, which favors him. I'm going to go Ricardo Ramos by decision. Chavez is a very tough guy to put away. All right, DePaula by decision over Oliveira. Let me go Cody Stamen. I do think he gets the win. The wrestling's going to be there, but over 2.5 rounds. Striking-wise, I don't think he puts Eddie Wineland away. I'm going to say Phil Hawes, Deron Winn. Fight does not go the distance. And last but not least, Kyle Daukaus, Roman Dolidze. Another fun fight, over 2.5 rounds. I like Daukaus there, but Dolidze is a tough guy. Will hang around, so over 2.5.
Well, I think we got to talk a little bit more about that Adrian Yanez, Tony Kelley fight. Adrian Yanez, a young kid who a lot of people are high on as a potential prospect in this division. Tony Kelley plus 250. He's a veteran, man. He has shown some gamesmanship. I think he's going to be there to fight. He's hungry at age 35, but Yanez has shown that he's something pretty special. Talk a little bit about Yanez, sort of how you see him in terms of he's coming out as a pretty big favorite in a lot of these different fights, and that is the case once again against a veteran in Tony Kelley.
I think for Adrian Yanez, what we've seen in his improvement, what is making him so special is, look, we know he's got the knockout power. We know he's a good striker. We know he can take shots. But I think it's also more about how he is getting a faster start in his fights. The fight against Randy Costa, we saw that first round, Randy Costa was beating him. He had to come back and knock him out. The fight against David Graham was also a tough one. He's got a guy in Tony Kelley here who is going to come forward, and he's going to be nonstop. He's got a great gas tank. He's going to throw a lot of volume. But sometimes when you come forward so much and you just keep going and you're willing to take a shot to give one, you get hit by someone. And when you get hit by a hammer like Adrian Yanez, you tend to go to sleep. I think Yanez is someone who's on the up and up, great counter striker, and a very smart fighter. I think he gets it done here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of these guys fly under the radar. Adrian Yanez is not doing that, man. I think the community is very high on him, and you are having to pay a premium for him early on in his career, but he does continue to get it done. Now, you mentioned that you were looking at him potentially in your parlay at -310. What else is on that parlay, man? Let's get to that, because I love me some parlays, some Parker parlays.
There you go. Let's start off Kyle Daukaus. Listen, up until the head clash with Kevin Holland, he looked fantastic in that fight. He is someone who's always been skilled, just had a hard time putting it together. Well, I see him putting together against someone, Roman Dolidze, who is very lax, slow, low volume. Give me Daukaus there. Phil Hawes. he's always winning his fights until he gets rocked. I don't see Duran Win rocking him at all. I don't think he'll be able to out-wrestle Hawes. I think Hawes is going to knock him out. So we're going to take him at minus 270. Back to the well on Adrian Yanez. I just don't see him losing this fight against Kelley. And last but not least, give me big mouth Kevin Holland to anchor that parlay at minus 280. And we're going to get plus 248 on this parlay, Brett. I'm liking it. Let's go.
It's a nice little payout at plus 248 with all of those big favorites. Let's just stay on the action right now and go straight to your best bets. Where are we going for our best bets at UFC Fight Night?
We got an interesting one here. We're going to go towards a lot of props. So I'm going main event, over 4.5 rounds. We talked about the durability of both men. That's where I'm leaning there. Cerrone and Lozon. Doesn't matter who wins. That fight is absolutely not going the distance. I do not see that happening. I'm going Demir in this one again over Gurham. I just think the activity, the striking, keeps the fight on the feet. He is the better boxer, should get it done. Marquez Rodriguez, over 1.5 rounds. And last but not least, Elise and Dawkins, over 2.5. I see Dawkins getting that one done by decision. And that's going to be the best bets.
I love it, man. I love it. I know you're a perfectionist, so you weren't happy with that 2-2. I mean, I always take a 2-2 over an 0-4, but I know you won 4-0, and you come out firing with 5 best bets and a parlay that pays us 248. I mean, this guy coming right back off of a disappointing week in his mind. I wouldn't even say 2-2 is a terrible week, but he wants to get aggressive here with the five best bets and the parlay plus 250. I love it, Ian. I like your style.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, listen, scared money doesn't make money. We got to come back stronger than ever, so let's go.
Absolutely, man. Well, we had a wild, fun night in the UFC last week at UFC 275. It's looking like it could be another big one, UFC Fight Night from Austin, Texas. It starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. Get your bets in and then come back, celebrate the money next week, and come back for Ian's picks on the very following UFC Fight Night. We'll see you then.